What is going on, everybody? Welcome into my top 10 safeties for the 2021 NFL Draft. This is our final top 10 breakdown leading up to the draft that is just a few days away. I will say I'm planning on posting just a recap of my top 10 and an update of my top 10 at each position just to have for the record. But at this point, you guys know the plugs, the video, like it, the Patreon, support it, the merch, buy it, the draft stream, be there, all that stuff, all that information in the description below. Let's go ahead and talk about some safeties and not trying to kill the mood here, but I just am not particularly high on this class. You know, a lot of people are actually hyping up this safety class, and I just can't really get there with a lot of these players. I think in general, and this is a bit of a tangent, but I think in general people tend to be a little bit too optimistic about draft prospects. And this is a case where going through these safeties, I couldn't match the enthusiasm of a lot of analysts and Twitter people out there. So I'm just going to put that out there that I'm just lower on this class. And for that reason, my top 10 list is going to look a lot different than a lot of people out there. But I'm going for accuracy here. I'm not going for clicks or anything like that. These are honestly, I dove into the tape very deep. And these were the rankings that I came away with, and I struggled with this group. But let's go ahead and get started. My number 10 safety is going to surprise some people. It's Brady Breeze out of Oregon, one of the best names in this entire class. But Brady Breeze, instead of throwing interceptions in the playoffs, he hopes to be the one catching them. And he has an interesting sort of process or career path, if you will. A senior coming out of Oregon, but did opt out of the COVID season. And then you go back to 2019, his true junior year. He actually was not a full-time starter to begin with. He was sort of that rotational dime safety. But he was so good, really starting at like the point of the USC game, that Oregon was like, we got to get you on the field. And he was not just like good enough to earn a starting job, he was like getting the attention of scouts, becoming a star safety, and had a ton of hype for this 2020 season. But West Coast, COVID, a lot of these guys ended up opting out, and especially in the Pac-10, and he was one of them. But his tape was good enough for him to say, I'm going to go to the draft, which means somebody told him he's going to be drafted relatively high, because he could have come back. He could have had that super senior season. So as far as what he is on the tape in that short period of time, he's a really balanced safety. A lot of free safety work there, but he can come down and play that strong safety. He's got the quickness to run man coverage as well, but he's really instinctive in zone coverage. He's a solid, sound tackler, just a very smart player, considering he did not play a ton of football. So there's a lot of fog of war on his evaluation just from the sheer sample size of his playing time, and also obviously the 2020 season just kind of adds maybe a little more of a boom or bust element to his game. But in the 4th, 5th round, he is the guy that I just want to take a chance on above some of these other guys, because a lot of the other players that people really like here, I feel like I kind of know what they are, and what that is doesn't get me all that excited. Brady Breeze, I think, could be a starting kind of hybrid safety in the NFL. So 4th, 5th round grade on Brady Breeze, definitely one of my guys in this draft. And then another one of my guys here, number 9, I don't think Darrick Forrest here is going to be making a lot of top 10 safety lists. He's actually going to come in ahead of his teammate here, Wiggins, who a lot of people like. But to me, this is all about upside with Darrick Forrest. The role he plays as that center fielding free safety, he has some of the best range in the class. He ran that 4.4 240, and to me that speed absolutely shows on tape. But it's not just like straight line speed. He can run a lot of that match stuff, flip his hips, convert into man coverage really well. He's a pretty good tackler. He's not a thumper. That's not the role he was asked to play. But just some inconsistency in his game. He's a smart player in zone, but just a lot of development to do there. So he's a player that I think 4th, maybe even 5th round, you look at bringing him in, say, let's just pick a team, the 49ers, say Jimmy Ward 2-3 years from now. We don't know if we want to keep paying him. Let's see if we can bring in a Darrick Forrest with these elite athletic traits to be that true rangy free safety and bring him along in a year or two, really getting that up to speed. Now that obviously there is development to do there, but just when I look at the traits and the role that he plays, I can buy into him as a top 10 safety in this class. And then talk about traits and names in number 8 here. Divine Diablo, maybe the only name in this class better than Brady Breeze. They named him Divine to counteract the devil that is his last name, but that's totally irrelevant, but still kind of a fun story. You never want to scout the helmet, but it was a little bit difficult watching his tape at 6'3", 225 pounds, coming downfield and just blasting running backs and slot receivers in the backfield to not think about Cam Chancellor. That's a huge stretch to get there. Cam Chancellor is one of my favorite players ever, but it was a little bit difficult not to connect those dots. And I think that if you want to be overly optimistic, Divine Diablo could be that type of player. He is that type of an athlete and plays with that type of mentality. So I'm a little surprised there's not more buzz, honestly, for Divine Diablo after the workout came out because of what Jeremy Chin was able to do for the Panthers as effectively a third-round pick last year, went at the very end of the second and was in contention for Defensive Rookie of the Year. And Divine Diablo as a prospect is very similar, just physically speaking. They're both kind of that hybrid strong safety linebacker that actually played a lot of single high safety in college. So there's that. I think just the tape was comparable. And I think Divine Diablo in the third, fourth round is a player that is scheme dependent. Not everyone's going to want this guy, but if you are, say, either a 4-3 base defense or you like to run those big nickel packages, he would be that sort of weak side linebacker, bandit safety, if you will, in more of those early down situations. And then he becomes a little more of that dime linebacker, strong safety type. So yes, certainly a bit of a role player, but Cam Chancellor was also a role player for the Seattle Seahawks and a full-time starter. So I look at Divine Diablo, a specific scheme fit, but kind of half linebacker, half safety. Some people have said he needs to convert to linebacker straight up. At his age, as a guy that didn't show necessarily the high-end thumping ability, I don't really see it. He didn't really get off blocks at a high level, but his sideline to speed was incredible. His ability to man up tight ends and slot receivers was really nice. His tackling ability in space, I like him more than, say, Hamza and Cyril Dean or Jacoby Stevens, some of these other kind of bandit linebacker types. If I'm taking one of those guys in the third, fourth round, to me it's Divine Diablo. Not that I hate those other players, but he to me was just a more secure tackler and played that role at a higher level for a longer amount of time. Then my number 7 safety here is someone that I have kind of unfortunately quickly become lower on because I think that the draft community is extremely high on him, and that is Jamar Johnson. Really fun player to watch, and his game against Ohio State put him on the map. Like, I don't think he would have declared this year if you just take that game and remove it. But that game did exist, and a lot of the traits he showed in that game showed up in other games as well. So it was not a fluke by any stretch of the imagination, but it did definitely boost the amount of attention that went to him, because obviously everybody was watching that game because that's the game that Justin Fields played like dog shit, right? So everyone wanted to go see that, and they're like, oh, he played like dog shit because Jamar Johnson went off. I think that's inflating his value a little bit because that's not necessarily his entire breadth of work. There is a lot to like. I will start with that. He has outstanding zone instincts. He plays a step ahead of the game. Like, he jumps stuff. He sees stuff happening before it develops, and he makes those plays, which is a rare trait. So I understand some of the excitement, but I also think he has some pretty significant weaknesses that are going ignored. Number one, he's just not a good athlete, and there was a lot of people surprised, when he came out and ran a 4.59 at his pro day, and that did not surprise me. I projected him at 4.55. I didn't think he was a high-end speed guy. He comes in at 4.59. Some people thought he was going to run the 4.4s, and he just doesn't have that sort of speed and that range, lack of range really, when he does play free safety at the next level. It's not a death sentence, but it does, it makes those margins very small. He has to consistently play a step ahead of these quarterbacks, which when you're going from the Big Ten to now having to do that against Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady and all of these NFL quarterbacks that have 10 years of experience, all of a sudden they're now ahead of you as far as you being able to see the game, and can you bridge that gap? So that's a question mark. And then my goodness, guys, we have to talk about his tackling because he is one of the worst tackling safeties I've ever evaluated. It makes me want to vomit sometimes. Like, he has no technique at all. He has some splash plays, absolutely. You will get those big hits. You will get those fun things that I'm showing on this highlight reel. But the majority of his attempts, he's lowering his head, like dipping it into his chin, getting way too low, taking bad angles, and he had the worst missed tackle rate of any safety in this class. And I think it was 5th of any player in all of college football. 26% of his tackle opportunities he missed. So he just is not a good tackler. It is going to become a question if he can play special teams with that. So you combine that with the lack of speed and athleticism, those are worries. He's a very fun player to watch and he makes some splash plays, but to put him in the second round, he's not a second round prospect to me. But this could also click. My high-end comp is Anthony Harris, but I think he's a much riskier prospect than a lot of people would like to talk about. So then we have Andre Cisco at number 6, and I honestly don't have any strong opinions or too many notes on Andre Cisco. He's a good, strong, downhill freight train of a safety. He is very stiff if you want to talk about like man coverage. I don't love him in the box a ton because, for one, he just doesn't have a lot of experience doing that. He was almost exclusively a free safety in that Syracuse kind of cover 3 defense. He was the Earl Thomas, if you will, for their defense. So just from a run defense perspective, he's not used to sort of dissecting those things. So if you want to play him in year 1 as a strong safety, he might have some learning curves in run defense, but I'm not necessarily worried about that. It's just something he needs to grow. But the stiffness in man coverage, typically more strong safeties do need to have the ability to convert into man coverage pretty quickly, and I don't see that with him. His ability to transition in space, I don't love. But his kind of just straight line juice, it's there, and that does give him an upside. It's why he gets a comp to Ronald Blair and on a high end Adrian Amos. But just like those guys who were mid-round picks, they're going to need some time to groom. You know, Adrian Amos wasn't a superstar the second he got into the league. He still probably isn't. He's got a little bit of a cap because of some of those tight movement skills. But that's just kind of the way I see Andre Cisco as a potential starter. Year 1, like if your safety group is brutal, he could probably step in there. It's not like he has no idea what he's doing. But he doesn't play with like a ton of zone anticipation, like a ton of instincts and coverage and all that stuff. But like he's not getting beat a bunch either. So he's just a good kind of sound safety, 3rd round prospect for me, potential starter. But he just doesn't get me particularly excited like he does for some other people. Then number 5, Ardarius Washington out of TCU. So I have a 3rd round grade on Ardarius Washington, but if he was 3 inches taller, a little bit heavier, and a step faster, he'd be in the conversation for a top 3 safety. It really is that simple. It's the size for him because he's smart, he's instinctive, he's tough. He does play a step ahead of the competition sometimes, which makes up for that speed. But how thin is that line going to be that he's going to have to walk at 178 pounds at 5'8"? I mean, at a certain point in time, you're playing the Seattle Seahawks, you're playing the Arizona Cardinals, for example, and it's DeAndre Hopkins and DK Metcalf, and they just say, yeah, find a way for me to get matched up on Ardarius Washington down the field, and he just won't be able to do it against the physical specimens in the NFL. So that is a significant question. You're going to need a creative defensive coordinator that can make sure he's not put in those positions. He has that flexibility. He can play free safety one play, strong safety the next, slot corner the play after that. So you like that flexibility. I don't want to say he's capped out, but he kind of is what he is at this point. You kind of know what you're getting. So I don't think he's going to become all that much better, but I think he can also play day 1 if you have that right system in there. So really nice, versatile, undersized defensive back. Really good instincts. I like him as a football player, but he's not going to be for everybody. And then we go to number 4, Tyree Gillespie. So from a kind of high floor, low ceiling guy that isn't going to be for everybody to a high ceiling player that I think any defensive coach in the league is going to look at Tyree Gillespie and be like, he can fit my system. Let me get this guy and let me work with him because he has the athletic traits. He's got the size, and he showed against the best of competition, against Alabama, coming downhill, thumping, taking down Najee Harris and Jalen Waddle, jumping a route and knocking a ball out on Devontae Smith. And then against Florida, manning up Kyle Pitts and not just doing a good job, like actually taking him out when he did that. You see those plays as a coach. You see his traits, 4.4 speed that's very much legitimate. The ability to man guys up, the big hits, the ball hawking instincts. You see all that and you're like, let me get this player. But there is consistency stuff there. He is a bit of a late bloomer. So there's a little bit of risk there. The flashes are exciting and you want to get in there to work with him, but just as far as consistently making the right risk, consistently showing up, frankly, against lesser competition, is that a motor thing? I don't know, because he wasn't the same player every single week. But at the end of the day, he's a super high upside prospect. I love that he can fit any system. He can be a single high free safety. He can be a 2-shell cover 4 guy with those hybrid skills to convert into man coverage quickly. I think he could play a lot of strong safety as well if he develops some of that motor and physicality against the run and just consistency as a tackler. So I do love the athletic upside, and his best games were as good as anybody on this list, other than Jamar Johnson against Justin Fields maybe. Then number 3, Richie Grant, just a smooth, smart, polished defensive back with versatility. I compare him to Jimmy Ward. I can't think of a much better comp as a guy that's played slot corner, strong safety, free safety. That's what I see in Richie Grant. So he played a lot of free safety, which he has good range there. He's not a burner, but similar to some of the things we said about Ardarius Washington, maybe Jamar Johnson, he makes up for a lack of elite speed with being a step ahead and playing with that anticipation in zone that maybe you don't get from a Tyree Gillespie or an Andre Sisco, for example, who are faster players. So he makes up for it there. It's not that he's slow, he's just not elite speed. But his agility, his quickness, his man coverage is super fun to watch. He'll come up and take tight ends and slot corners and run with them to the sideline or match double moves, all that good stuff. He's a really willing tackler and run defender and good ball skills. Just a do-it-all, play him anywhere type of defensive back. I particularly like him as a free safety, strong safety, a free safety hybrid cover 4 type of free safety, as opposed to more of a traditional strong safety that spends all of his time down in the box, because I do think he's kind of best up top patrolling the entire field. And he's a little bit smaller. While he is good in run defense, I don't know if you want him doing that consistently down to down. I don't know how much better he's going to get at that either. So there's Richie Grant, nice player, 2nd, 3rd round pick. I think he's a day 1 starter and kind of is what he is in a lot of ways. It's not that there isn't room to grow, but just maybe a slight cap on his athletic ceiling. Now I'm going to ruffle some feathers with my number 2 safety, because it's going to be Trayvon Merrick. And it's probably more that I like Javon Holland more than other people, and you'll see that the ratings on these guys are neck and neck, and depending on your system, you might go with Merrick over Holland based on my eval. But let's just talk about who Merrick is as a player, because I don't hate Merrick by any stretch of the imagination. I do think some people have pushed him up a little higher than he should, in my opinion, into like the top 20. Really good safety prospect, but to me he's not a true first-round player like I had on Antoine Winfield. Last year was a top 16 player in the class for me. I'm not even close to that with Trayvon Merrick. I do think Trayvon Merrick's a day 1 starter, and I love his upside in these modern hybrid defenses where he's going to run a lot of quarters defense, where he can convert those zone skills into man coverage and get vertical, run to the sideline. And again, if you're running that system specifically, you're going to take Trayvon Merrick over Javon Holland, and a lot of teams do run that system. But if you want to talk about him in the box, he's not a good run defender. He just isn't an overly physical player. He plays a lot more like a cornerback than he does a strong safety, which is fine. It's just kind of a stylistic preference there. But a smart player. I just happen to like my number 1 corner, Javon Holland, a little bit more. So to me, it's just a slight nod based on A, the versatility, but also B, just strictly off of their tape. I prefer Javon Holland as a sophomore to Trayvon Merrick. And if the if the reason people are putting Merrick over Holland, to me, is much more about just because Holland didn't play, and we didn't get to see that next year of growth. Almost every player in this class has their best year in that final year, and I don't see any reason why Holland wouldn't continue to grow as a football player. And if he did, I actually like his sophomore tape better than Trayvon Merrick's junior tape. So there's the gap right there. But again, this gap is extremely marginal. 6'4" on Holland is 6'6" on Trayvon Merrick. So it's a matter of preference and scheme fit. But Javon Holland, a significantly better run defender. Not that that's my biggest priority for these guys. But he's also a smarter zone cover player. Just plays with more plays with a little more anticipation with his eyes on the quarterback, can see those route concepts develop a little bit better. I also am in love with the way that he communicates assignments before and after the snap at those difficult mesh points that you see all the time. Just a super high IQ player. He's physical. He tackles well. He doesn't get enough respect for the way he uses his long arms to get off blocks, and he can be more of that true strong safety as well. The other exciting thing about Javon Holland is he actually ran a faster 40 than Trayvon Merrick, by the way, who everyone says Merrick is this exceptional athlete. And I still think Merrick is a better athlete, but I think this gap is extremely tight, as you can see by my athleticism grades on these graphics. But Javon Holland played almost exclusively strong safety and slot corner. There is some projected upside in a different system for him to take even another step forward as a free safety that he just wasn't asked to do at Oregon. So there's some exciting potential upside there as well. But even if that's not the case, I think he is a better football player around the box, just to give him a higher grade in general. But, if he doesn't develop those free safety skills, again, Merrick may be more of that high up, play up top free safety type. I can't stress this enough because I can see people coming at me for this. This is a matter of scheme and preference. And I'm not even saying I would necessarily, for every team, take Holland over Merrick. This is just the grade. But anyway, Holland gets me excited. I think he's one of the sleepers in this class because of COVID. There's this massive flushing out of these COVID opt-out players. And of all of them, Javon Holland had the career trajectory. He's a baller. He was coming into his junior year. And just playing in that Pac-10, their year just got lost. So him and Brady Breeze was really impressed. Had a lot of fun watching them play football. And I think Javon Holland is going to be a better safety in the NFL than Trayvon Merrick. Again, depends on landing spot there, but just very slight discrepancies. But I'm going to go out on a limb and put Javon Holland as my number one safety, which is a little bit bold, but we're going to see how this goes. It worked out for me with Antoine Winfield last year. So there are my top 10 safeties for the 2021 NFL Draft. And I hope you guys enjoyed. Make sure you subscribe and come back for all the draft content. Come back on draft night. And we'll see you guys later. Peace.